Testing, testing.
Yes.
I think it's that one.
Go on the standby. Now you're live.
Testing.
Okay, good evening. Welcome, everybody. I didn't do a head count, but I'd say we've got a bigger crowd here than we normally have for a bee competition, which is our goal. So let me go through some slides here. Just some housekeeping things. We're open at 6:30 now. We have snacks. We hope to have snacks every week. There's some cookies back there, cheese and crackers. After we're done tonight, you don't have to storm out of here. You can have some snacks. There's a sign up in there in the gathering room. I have a name badge sign up right here in the front. I'm going to order name tags in probably 2 weeks. So those of you at home, if you're going to start coming, come in next week and sign up for a name tag, and we'll get them done in a couple of weeks. So what's going on in the near future, near as tomorrow, is our cabin fever party. One of our most popular events. Nothing has changed here other than the date. It's tomorrow. If you were here last week, sorry about that. Don't forget your $18 unless you're going to bring a covered dish and bring a wrapped gift. Starts at 7 o'clock tomorrow here at the clubroom. Then on next Friday, we're going to have the black and white competition, which is a projection. It's the last black and white of the year, and the deadline is already passed for that. And then the following one is our very popular critique nights. And we have Richard Ader is going to be our critiquer, or our critiquer and our editor. So what we're going to do is we're going to make comments on your images and suggestions, and Richard will live time do some edits on them and see how we can make them look better. Submit 3 images. You don't have to resize them. Richard will take care of that. Your deadline is the Wednesday before, which would be February 11th. Send them to info@clevelandphoto.org. And then we have something a little unusual. So any of you who are not familiar with him, David Bush is our resident photography expert. And when I say expert, we're talking international expert. He's written over 350 how-to camera books, in addition to computer books and other things. He's the one who normally has been doing our monthly special interest group meetings. And we're kind of doing a little floating the boat here and see how it would work. We're going to have him on a Friday night on February 20th. He's going to be here in person, and he's going to do a presentation that says everything you know is wrong, busting the most deceiving photographic myths. And Richard and I are going to get in debate in front of him. No, I'm just kidding. For those of you who are at home don't know, we had a little lively debate tonight about one of those myths. So come on the 20th and hear David Bush. He's outstanding. Then we have a field trip on February 21st, the next day, Saturday. It is going to be the Trinity Cathedral. The donation is $20 on the day, so you don't have to send in money or anything, but you do need to register through the website. That's going to run from 8:30 to 11:30, and there's just tremendous glass, stained glass and architecture and things that you just don't see anymore. So make sure you make that. We're still looking for speakers, somebody that would like to do some kind of a presentation on something that they have done photographically. Just contact Bev Frazier at that email. And it's time for our prizes. So I need some victims, and that's always the, or did I say victims? Recipients. So who here has entered in the competition tonight? Let me see how many people have entered in the competition. Okay, those of you who have entered in the competition, keep your hand up if you are wearing a name tag. 1, 2, 3. You 3, up front and center. That was easy. This is the hardest part of what I'm doing, is finding the contestants. Yeah, please don't hit your head there. So I have to give full disclosure. My treasurer asked me, oh, where's this money coming from? Well, so far, I've been getting donations. Some of the stuff tonight has been donated by Gary Bloom, who's our director of fundamentals. And I've gotten it from various places. Some of the stuff has really good value, and some of it maybe not so much. So with that, we'll let ladies go first. Pick one of the boxes. No, you can't lift them. You can't shake them. This is not Christmas. This is what's going to happen tomorrow night, right? At Cabin Fever, people are going to look at the gifts and decide which one looks better from the outside. Okay, we're going to hold that off to the side for a minute. You can just step aside for a minute because you picked one that's got some special circumstance. And we'll let you go next. Hubby goes next. Okay, you can go ahead and open it and show people that we have an assortment of legacy camera straps. There's 2 of those, and then there's a Nikon, and I think there's also which one is that? I can't remember. An Olympus. So you've got camera straps to keep you going forever. All right. I seem to remember I think I had one of those wide ones. You might have also seen those on guitar players in the 60s. Okay. You get what's in there. I think the 2 of you hit something they're really useful and they're good. His is awesome. Now that's a really right stuff. It is a ball head. It is a nice ball head. It's not a really right stuff ball head, but it is it's still being sold. Those are still available. You guys can, hey, you can do your own swap later. You want to see what's in your box? There's nothing in there. because it wouldn't fit in a box. This is a rotary trimmer.
Oh, wow.
I used one today. I have one that I would have kept this if I didn't already have one.
Wow.
The cool thing about these is you don't ever have to replace the blade. They don't cut a lot of sheets of paper, but they can slice a 1/16 of an inch off. They're really, so you lift this up, put the paper in, push down kind of hard, and there's a wheel in there, and that cuts the paper. Mine is over 40 years old and it's still working fine.
Wow, thank you.
There you go. So we're gonna donate the rest of the night to Richard. I think like paper clips and things.
Think we on? Yeah.
Okay, so now we're doing our bee competition, which is going to
Okay.
include critiques, and Richard's going to take it
I will
over.
give
here.
you I'm a sucker. I always go for the biggest and the heaviest box, and which is not always the smartest way, but okay. What we're going to do tonight with the bee competition is we're going to show the images like we usually do. We're going to read the judges' comments because none of the judges are here tonight. We have their written comments. So we'll have readers who read that. And sometimes they have suggestions in there, like I would crop this or whatnot. And in which case, I'm going to do that real time up in Photoshop. Also, if the judge has not said anything or made comments or whatnot, I am going to put my 3 cents, not 2 cents, 3 cents in for each one of these as well. Yeah, a question already. Oh yeah, I was, as soon as I was going to do this way you could hear me. Yeah, then I usually turn the lights off and I've got this down pat. Okay, so that is what we're going to do. Now, remember these with editing, I want to add this before. Please, if in the audience you have any opinions on this too, let us know. Because one of the things with editing is where I might think a certain crop looked better this way, or the judges think, or this, as you might feel completely different. And it doesn't make it right or wrong what the judges say. It's your art. And it is sometimes amazing how you see in the audience a number of people say, no, I liked it better this way or that way too. And that's part of the learning experience. So please just chime in at any time. So what we'll do is we will get set. 3 of the images, and I'll get to them. I don't know what the judges are going to comment, but I think the images, if I had to guess, were sent in really, really small, very small. And as a result, I saw in Shutterscore for the judges, the image was put on just a white background with the image up in the corner. So if the judge says that, if there's a comment like that, I will remind you that that's what happened. What I did is I took the image and I upsized it so you won't see that original one. But for 3 of the images there, that was the case. So, okay, so we will get underway. Now I'm going to turn the lights down. There we go. Going to get the computer set to go here. Okay, and good. We will bring up our first image then. Okay, so want to read from the judges?
Oh, getting a lot of buzz here.
Oh, Buzz, we need here's a handheld mic. Here we go, in case you need it. Okay. Okay, so first image.
Okay. Nancy Ballard says, the black and white part of this photo is incredibly dynamic, and the light and shadows are powerful. In my opinion, leaving the green light at the bottom of the column takes away from the overall photo. If the maker knows how to convert a color photo into black and white, then perhaps they could try to do that with this photo to see if they might like it a bit better. Since the top part of this photo is the strongest, maybe the maker might also consider using a square crop to isolate the facial sculpture.
Okay, I was thinking the same thing. So what Nancy is saying is you could see it's a very striking black and white image, but down here you have a little bit of color. If we make it black and white, that takes it out. What I would also, I was going to straighten this. See how this comes down at an angle? But then the head up here is kind of perfect as is. And Nancy's idea, I would do two things. You see there's a little bit of the column up here, and it kind of goes off the center. And if you were editing, one of the things we could do is just with a little brush, if I just paint that black, and you could see, now these might show, some of these might show the subtle changes better on the side monitors rather than this one. But you could see there, you have that little stop part on the top that's, now it's gone completely. And let's go to Nancy's, what she suggested about a square crop, kind of going in on the head. Let's bring that. Yep, so what do you think? Or that's, so these are just some suggestions, but again, you know, again, beautiful image, fine, but these are little tiny things that you could do to strengthen the image. And I think if we, I think rotating would make it, let's try to get that, oh, no, fine. If we straighten that column completely, and let me just crop down there. So there, we have our image like that. So these are, again, just little different things you could think about at the time. Our before one, if we go back, that's the before one. Okay, we have the rendering on this.
That is A Guardian of Transportation by Kenneth Hedina, 22 points.
Okay. Okay, we have the judges on this one.
Overall, the exposure and colors are good, leading to a pleasant image. A couple of suggestions to increase the impact would be to have more of a focal point. The two individuals walking are too far away and tend to get lost. Also, may help to emphasize the trail by lowering the camera to create a stronger leading line.
Yeah, this one, I kind of like this as is, that with the people being, there's no way to kind of make them larger. You could crop down, but I just like the way the trail just goes off like this. I think the exposure, everything is done fairly well. Maybe I will bring the blacks up just a tiny bit. Give it a little more contrast here. And let's see what that looks. This is just, and you could see then, sometimes it's not noticeable, but I didn't see any true blacks here as well. Now that's the original picture, and just adding a little bit of contrast. And you know, you could always back off that, but it's always good to experiment with that little bit, because then you realize that that might look a little bit flat. And there's our other one. So, a very nice image though. Okay.
That is called Allegheny by Reed Vale, 18 points. Okay, this is comments by Dan Sandy that says there's a lot to appreciate in this image. The overall focus is crisp and the exposure is handled well, giving the scene a clean and natural feel. The branching patterns are especially engaging and offer some lovely visual texture. At the same time, the composition feels a bit busy, which makes it harder for the viewer's eye to settle on a clear focal point. A few of the brighter areas could be gently darkened to keep attention on the strongest parts of the image. You might also consider cropping or adjusting the top edge, as the branches there pull the eye away from the main subject.
Right, and that is, again, it's nice pattern, but I agree with Dan, it's busy, and you have this area up top and down below, which doesn't add anything. But what my eye always gets drawn upon, just like the first image, is if something isn't straight up and down, if it's on a little bit of an angle where it shouldn't be, it just sometimes looks out of place. And if we could just, and here I'll try just straightening that. There, that just is more visually pleasing. And to Dan's point, let's bring it down to just the patterns, just with cropping. So we haven't done anything on exposure or adjustment. All we've done is a little bit with cropping, and that looks like a whole different picture. Now you have this object in there that's straight up and down. You have that beautiful pattern all around like that. And it just tends to, here's the original. So, right. That was our original with a little angle and with those things down there. And then the other way is when we rotated. We rotated and just cropped a little. Whoops, let me. So again, if you're thinking in editing, these are small little things, but the cropping could sometimes make a huge difference, and that's our afterwards. Any comments on that? Or? Okay, Chris.
That is entitled Birdhouse by David Williams. That is a score of 19.
Okay.
Nancy says, "What a beautifully colored bird. The blue feathers really stand out nicely against the green background. I am assuming that the maker used a more open aperture, thus creating the nice soft background. But in doing so, only a small part of the bird's breast is in focus. When photographing a human, animal, or bird, we like to see the eyes in sharp focus, which can sometimes be quite difficult if photographed on a moving subject or by not using a tripod. If the maker knows how to do some minor editing, they might consider darkening down that bright white spot in the upper left-hand corner. Several editing programs now have some excellent sharpening features that can do a remarkable job of realistically fixing out of focus subjects. The maker did a nice job of cropping this photo and finding such a beautiful subject."
Hey, on this one, I agree with Nancy. There are several things. Now, when you're not in a studio, you can't say, oh, there's this bright light, because our eye is drawn to that. So that's distracting. But you don't really have a choice. The bird is sitting there, you get it, you can't move any different place. So those are things we could take care of. But you notice the key thing you always look at, and the first thing Nancy looked at, is the eye. And if the eye is not in focus, and here it really is in focus there, that tends to distract you. Now, it could be that the picture just wasn't in focus, they weren't on a tripod or whatnot, but there is another thing that actually I'm doing some editing now, and on some of my wildlife shots, I noticed this is a problem that are not in focus. Is it might not be a technique problem, but also where you focused. If this bird is far away and you're using your little spot thing to focus, and you focus on the chest here, the chest could be in focus, because here I think some parts here are in focus, or maybe on this branch are in focus, and the head, which is a little bent forward, is out. So this might actually be, you have to take care that your spot focus is on the eye, because if it's on another part of the bird, or it just slips over to the side here, it could actually focus on something else, and that would be the problem. Nancy's also correct, is this could be brought back in a lot of things. So let's try on this. Let's bring it into Photoshop. And what she was talking about with that bright spot up there, let me get if we just kind of draw a little thing around that, and let's see. You think what, Eric? Actually, it's interesting. No, you're right. It's behaving like that, but there's nothing on the keyboard here at all. Yeah, now this is not exact. Sometimes you get three choices. You're right, but some of them, again, so here is before and now that distracting thing because our eyes are drawn to the light is there. Now let's also see if we could, if sharpening, Nancy's right, there are some programs that could sharpen that up. And let's see, we don't have them on this computer, but we have something we put on today. Let's see if it's a little too much. Let me bring that down. Oops. Yeah, that is okay. Yeah, it's such a low res image. But oh, we're gonna have to get the computer right. Our computer is behaving funny. But you could see here is there are some ways to sharpen this up. So in other words, if you get a picture like this, and what Nancy was talking about was Topaz is the program, and there are ways that make this image perfectly sharp again. So if you have some images that are just a little bit out of focus like this, you could run it through a program like Topaz Sharpen and it will make this very sharp and whatnot. So there are ways to salvage these things as well. So at least you see what we're talking about, getting that distracting part out. Okay, Chris?
That is Bluebird by Steven Spencer, 19 points.
Okay, which judge has this one? Okay.
Okay. A great classic image. The composition is very nice. There's beautiful separation of the background and the subjects. The only critique would be the image is a little underexposed, making it look a little flat. An optional finishing touch would be a slight vignette.
Okay. One of the things I noticed in this, again, and it's very hard when you're this close, is your primary subject, the bee, is not in focus, or maybe a tiny bit of the eye, but most is not. So you have to be careful. If you're down focusing or you're close here, you might have been focused correctly on the eye, but your depth of field is so small that the bee is not in focus, and that's where the eye is going to look. Again, some of this part of the flower is in focus. So if you're on a tripod and whatnot, or if not, and you can, try to use a very small lens opening so you get a bigger depth of field. One of the things what Nancy was talking about is in terms of separating that out from the background, is if we could, let's see, if I invert that, and if we just darken the background a little, and if we lighten the, oops. There, and I'm just kind of doing it rough there, but a little thing to separate it out. So what we've done is and you could just try any combination of these. If the background there, if we want it, we could actually lighten the background up a little more, but in ways to kind of separate it out. The other thing Nancy was talking about that can help is to put a little vignette around it. So if we take this, computer is, and Okay, we will do that a different way. So if we want it, the period on the keyboard. Okay. Okay. But what we're going to do is we are going to put a vignette on this. Okay. And actually it is. Okay, we'll leave this one as is there. Want to read the score on this one?
That is Bumblebee on Spotted Knapweed by William Meekins, 23 points, third place.
Here we go. Very good. Wait,
Dan says this is a compelling image. The contrast between the Christmas lights and the deep black background creates a striking, almost cinematic mood. The footsteps leading toward the viewer work beautifully as a leading line, pulling the eye right into the scene. As you edited the background, it looks like a small area at the base of the tree may have been darkened a bit more than intended. Adjusting that spot and allowing some light to fall beyond the tree would make it feel more natural and cohesive. The exposure overall is handled very nicely, though the focus seems just slightly soft, which takes a bit of impact away from the otherwise strong composition.
Okay. We are going to just reboot our computer for a second, or else let me just close these down. Okay. Computers, can't live with them, can't live without them. And we can't live without them. Okay, so here is our, let's see if we can just, okay. Chris, you want to read that again?
Read the judge comment?
Yeah, because I didn't
Okay.
have the picture.
Okay. This is what Dan says. This is a bold, attention-grabbing image. Wait a minute. I turned the page already, didn't I? Sorry. Yes. Dan said, this is a compelling image. The contrast between the Christmas lights and the deep black background creates a striking, almost cinematic mood. The footsteps leading toward the viewer work beautifully as a leading line, pulling the eye right into the scene. As you edited the background, it looks like a small area at the base of the tree may have been darkened a bit more than intended. Adjusting that spot and allowing some light to fall beyond the tree would make it feel more natural and cohesive. The exposure overall is handled very nicely, though the focus seems just slightly soft, which takes a bit of impact away from the otherwise strong composition.
Okay. When I looked at the one thing that beautiful image is that I noticed is if the background was artificially darkened, which is fine, I noticed some parts in here in the middle of the tree that are still gray and not black. So what we could do is just paint that over with black there. And there are a number of parts too. So that's just a little trick to get those areas that you couldn't get around the tree. So this is our before and there. So there's just a minor thing. But again, I agree with darkening the background like that. This just makes a spectacular image, but where it's real difficult in the center like that, just painting with black took care of it. So otherwise, beautiful image. Okay, Chris.
That is Enlightened Tree by David Lawrence, 24 points, second place.
Very nice. Okay.
Nancy's comment is, this photo is so interesting. My eyes enjoyed exploring all of the vibrant colors, especially now when we are experiencing the lack of color here in Northeast Ohio. Even the painter's apron is splashed in vibrant hues. The viewer can plainly see that the painter has a specific subject that he likes to paint, and it gives this photo a cohesive, orderly presence. The maker did a nice job of capturing a special moment in time. The exposure is wonderful too. If the maker agrees, I would suggest to crop a bit more off the left-hand side of the photo to get rid of the person holding the coat. I also think that this photo needs to be straightened just a smidgen. To me, the steps seem to be leaning to the right just a little bit. Thanks to the maker for showing this great photo. It was fun to see.
So there's Nancy's suggestion about the coat on the left, which I agree there. So doing that and straightening it a little. When I look at this too, there's two things that just to really just to perfect this image. One, there's a lot of empty space to this man, to the right side of the picture here. We have all this beautiful area here on the left with things going on, but this is nothing on the right. So the question is could we just crop a little of that out to not have so much, just bring it in somewhere like that. So he's in the rule of thirds and it just goes together. And then there's one thing that always really bothers me, and that is the red line that's going across the side. It just kind of comes out of nowhere and goes nowhere. And again, it just distracts. So if we take that and we just it's thinking now. Oh, there we go. Boy, we're straining our computer tonight. There. So that is the red sash. There it is. There, it's gone now. By cropping in, we've taken out, as Nancy said, that coat on the left. We've taken out some of the negative space on the right, and now it's just more of a balanced picture and really filled with a lot of interesting things, because on his left are all these little paint things down here, and you have a lot going on. So again, if you're doing a street scene like this, you can't go in and take the red thing out. You can't, you know, this is artistic decisions you could make afterwards. So recognizing this, the difficulty is recognizing a good image, which the maker here did. And the other is things that you just can't control then, and that's the artistic decision. And I really just like this one, like this. And yeah, question.
The nice thing about this crop is there's a diagonal line. He's looking
Ah.
down, so from the top right down to the lower left,
The
it's
top,
a natural diagonal line.
yes, from the audience, for the people at home, yes, you brought up the excellent point. There's almost a diagonal from like the top of his hat you were talking. Yeah,
Well, even the photo above his shoulder.
Yeah, photo above his shoulder, right. Things just lead down on a diagonal. I agree. It's just a very, very nice photo. But these are the little touch-ups afterwards. Yeah, Chris?
That is Florence Street Artist by Barbara Good, 24 points, second place.
Very nice. Okay.
This is a wonderful image. The water, lights, composition are all very nice. I especially like the star effect of the lights and the light beam coming from the boat's spotlight. Well done. My only critiques would be the colors look to be a little off and the image leans to the right a bit.
The colors, what did they say? The colors were a little off what? A little green? What? You know, it's always hard because all this is artificial light. You know, that's lights from the ship and neons, and these things are lit up. Let's see if I change the color balance a little. Oh, it's hard to know. Let me try taking down some of the orange. Oops. Saturation. Take the orange down a little. It's real hard. I think the maker was stuck with this is the way the lights just are there. And these are all artificial lights, so it's not like it's cloudy or the white balance could fix things off. This is just a whole bunch of like artificial studio lights. And I don't know what would change that. Yeah, right, exactly. These are colored ones too. So I think that's the way this actually looked. Right, and the orangish thing is because a lot of these are more tungsten based or incandescent like that. So no, I think this is very true to form. Nice capture. Okay, Chris.
That is Freighter Buffalo by David Lawrence, 23 points, third place.
Very good.
Dan says this is a bold, attention-grabbing image and it makes an immediate impact. The exposure is well handled and the main subject is sharp, which helps anchor the viewer. The branches create a natural frame that works nicely with the composition. The dark object in the bottom right corner is distracting, though, and cropping it out would strengthen the overall composition. A slightly wider view could help situate the moment more clearly. Including the faces of the people involved would have been additional added emotional weight and helped convey the story behind the protest even more effectively. Because the scene carries a strong message, it may resonate more in a photojournalism category where context and storytelling are central versus a photo competition.
I think, just as an aside thing, I think Dan has kind of put it correctly. This would be more for a photojournalism thing. I think you have to be cautious whenever you're entering something that is really expressing a strong view because your audience might not be, totally in agreement. So a picture could tend to become divisive, whereas in a photojournalism category, it's a documentation. It's not trying to get things across. But let's switch to just a photographic thing here too. One of the things here is when I look at the picture, there just seems to be the upside down flag, the flags here add a lot. This is kind of off to the left somewhat. And I don't know what this just adds on the right. And I was just looking at a little crop more like that. Put your main object on the rule of thirds. And now you have your flags, your colors down there, your item of interest is occupying a space there, and it's just more balanced photographically than here is the original. Oops. Okay.
That's entitled It's Only a Model by Tim Karash, 21 points.
Nancy says, "Oh, to be sitting in this spot, watching the river in this gorgeous location. It looks warm and inviting. Good photos capture an emotion in its viewers, and right now this photo brings peace and joy to my heart. The maker's subject, exposure, and composition are wonderful. Technically, if the maker agrees, I would crop in on the left-hand side to get rid of the small slice of the tree bordering the house and maybe get rid of the few little leaves in the bottom left of the photo. To be really nitpicky, maybe crop a bit off the top left to get rid of the overhanging pine tree needles. I really enjoyed studying this photo. The maker did a great job of pulling the viewer into this magnificent location."
Okay. Now, here's a very good photo to show you sometimes little differences of opinion. Here was Nancy's suggestion here. I look at this, I see several things. One, again, the work is finding an image that looks good. And the maker here said, this is a nice scene and composed it fine. A lot of the things, again, because you're not in a studio, are out of your control that we take care of in post. Now, on this, the house just seems to me to go off. I don't see the whole house. It's just kind of lost there. And I actually liked the, oops. I actually like that tree on the side there too. It kind of gave me a boundary there. But as I look at this, it's hard because the camera is going to take an average of the whole scene and just expose for that. And it's fine, but the sky here is a little too bright. You know, and there was probably some more clouds there. So one of the things I could do is if I can just on the sky selectively bring down the highlights. There. So that's more like you saw it. But the camera, again, it's not an incorrect setting or anything else like that. Camera could only take one aperture, and it kind of just averages everything out there. So I would bring that back a little. And then as we look at things here, is if we, again, since we're not in a studio, I know I keep saying that, is these light poles here, not the fence. The fence kind of goes out and is nice, but we don't see the bottom of these light poles. Here it just is, it's a line that just kind of goes through there. And if we could just take off those, oops. And let's see, it's thinking, it's thinking, it's thinking. Yeah, and on the bottom, now those things that hang from the top, well, let's take those out too. These things that stick in the bottom, which you couldn't tell, and let's, to Nancy's point, take out these on the top. Let's see if it moves that. There. And now we have, there's our 4. So little things like it's a beautiful scene, but those light poles on the side, taking that, now it's a really, I think, just a well-balanced scene. We've darkened the sky. We've taken those distracting things hanging down from up above. So again, just the fine tuning of making it a really, really nice, nice picture. And also you could probably add some contrast in this. Let's just see. It looks a bit to me, if I add a little, these trees seemed a little flat. And so there's our, there. You can see now where they look a little flat in the back, and we've kind of added it there. That is, I just added some contrast. I darkened the darks in there, so none of the lights changed. And added, so right now, again, this is just a beautiful scene, and all we've done is just taken the little distractions out, but gorgeous image. Okay, Chris?
That is Italy's Beauty by Barbara Good, 22 points.
I really like this image, though. Very, very nice. No one asked my opinion, though. Okay. Okay.
This is an interesting image. There's good texture in the snow, and plant is nice and sharp. The image overall could use a boost in exposure so that the snow is white and the shadows lifted to get a little more detail in the foliage. Overall, the main subject is missing a focal point. My eye searches for a specific detail or item to focus on.
Okay. Now on this, see, snow has texture, but sometimes it's hard to see. But what it was saying, and I agree, is this is a nice diagonal across here, but this stuff, the bottom left, doesn't add anything. So the first thing I try is just experiment with cropping out the left a little. Now you notice we get that right there. Then the next thing I would do is your eyes are just a little distracted. I would just maybe just down and dirty take out those little things that are towards the edge of the frame, those black dots there, that's out. And maybe I'll just take these out as well. So now we have this diagonal going down with the snow in the back that looks really nice. And one of the other things you could do, and let me try it on this, is to give it some texture. I'm actually just going to move the texture slider. And so there's our before, and now you see it has, the snow has granularity to it and texture. Cut back on that. Yeah, so now it's a beautiful picture. You accentuated the snow. There's nothing that's not needed. That little stuff that was off to the left just distracted from the symmetry. And again, recognizing a good capture, and you've just kind of made these little creative things in post. Here's our original crop there. Only in white balance, right? Because there is no color in black and white. What were you thinking in terms of doing what with the color? Right. Yeah, if this is, I assume this is black and white. You're right, I don't see any color in the, right, if this was a color picture, then yes, you could use the eyedropper and get a perfect kind of thing. Usually what happens is in snow, pictures with a lot of snow, the camera says, oh, this is too much light. And what it'll do is it makes the picture, kind of, it cuts down the light automatically and your picture comes out gray. This to me looked pretty, as I look at this, maybe a little, I'm looking at the histogram, let me give it a little more white, but it looked pretty good. That's, yep, that's the maximum white there too, so yeah. So, but you can see these little adjustments afterwards could sometimes really bring out the symmetry in a picture, everything like that. So, Chris, you got the...
That is Milkweed 2 by David Williams, 18 points.
But remember, a lot of these are getting judged on the original. Is after we've worked on some of these, that last picture, I really like that scene with the house in it and whatnot too, once we were working on it. And this, I really like this as well. So these scores don't necessarily, a lot of these pictures I like are after we've made some creative things as well. Okay, let's see.
Dan says the red ivy adds a beautiful pop of color to an otherwise subdued palette, and the vines create strong leading lines that guide the viewer through the frame. The pump and old-fashioned well are interesting elements that add character to the scene. Focus is crisp and the exposure is handled very well. The crop feels a bit tight though. Showing a little more of the table and pump could help the composition breathe and give those elements the space they deserve.
Okay, this is a rough one. First thing I thought on this is it's a little pale. If I wanted to bring out the colors some more, and I experimented with just upping the colors a little bit more. So even here's our before and afterwards. Let me bump more just for effect there. So we just bring it out. And there's a lot of wood in here and things that I think would benefit by texture. So just moving the texture slider up some there as well. So here's our before. So these are minor things. And let me look at, on the crop, I agree it's tight crop, but this little platform above, if I were to come down off that, or at least somewhere up here, and I'm just playing it by ear now. And then this little black, let me try with the cropping to bring it up a little there, just so we get the, and that just makes it look a bit more symmetric. We've boosted the colors, we've given it some texture, we've adjusted the crop a little there as well. So these are all little minor things that you could you could do just to, just to see whether you like it or not. We got this?
That is Retaken by Nature by Tim Koresh. 23 points, third place.
Very good. Nice.
Nancy says, Stone Garden Farm is an excellent place to photograph so many fabulous subjects like this old car. Whenever a photographer feels the need to get their mojo back, Stone Garden Farm is the place to go. Since the top part of this car was in deep shadow, the maker wanted the viewer to only look at the lower rusty half, which was a good cropping choice. The lines of the bumpers and the shapes of the fenders and lights add interest to the photo. Perhaps to bring out more of the rusty color, the maker might consider bringing down the exposure, possibly increasing the color warmth, or be even more daring and try converting this photo into a black and white. The maker has numerous editing possibilities at hand if they choose to do some fun editing. Oh, one other bit of advice when cropping: try not to have your subject barely touch the sides of the photo, as the bumper and fender do on the right-hand side. If the maker had cropped in further, let's say on both sides of the photo,
Arms, this car is wedged in there. You might not have been able to get anything, back on the side. One thing we can, let's see. Oh, that looks okay. And one of the things you have in your armamentarium there is we just expanded the side a little. We had AI make up some stuff on either side so that Nancy's point, the car isn't touching the edges there as well. The other thing is your eye is drawn to the brightest part, and this down here is just really doesn't add anything and is all white. Now I could darken that down, but let me just experiment with just cropping up a bit so there's not as much of that, since again, it doesn't add anything. And then if we come down on just the brights there as well, and let me give it a bit of texture. You can see like in the radiator and whatnot, and in the license plate, let me do this before. Yeah, and you can see on the fender, it just brings up a bit more texture. This is hard because there's not a big and Nancy's point was exactly, there's not a lot of separation of colors here. They're all a kind of a reddish, brownish kind of thing too. So one of the things she suggested is trying in black and white. And there your eye goes more just to patterns. And sometimes that, let's see if we could just take our blacks up a bit. And black and white mixer. You could experiment with, but again, where you don't have a lot of different colors and whatnot, switching it to black and white lets you experiment with the patterns here, especially with those two headlights just kind of glaring out at you. But this was a harder one to do. Yeah, Chris?
That is Rusty by Ann Williams, 20 points.
Very nice composition and portrait of an egret. The separation from the subject and background is very good. My critiques would be the eye is difficult to make out. Also, the image is underexposed. To help preserve the backlit highlights, instead of bringing up the overall exposure, raise the shadows, which may help bring out the eye, then mask the feathers and brighten to bring those closer to white.
Okay. This is a hard one because it's backlit. So the light is actually coming from behind. And what they're suggesting is if we kind of try to lighten up just the eyes So let's see. Let's just see if that does anything. I think it's hard because let me try up on the exposure. Come up a little. You don't want it to look artificial. So there is a little, there, you can see. Just doing this seat of the pants wise. So there you have that, and we brightened up there. In regards to, I think this, the feathers, I could see texture and whatnot. Lightening them, I think would one, we'd lose the detail there, and two, since it's backlit, there's not supposed to be any light on this side. I think for a backlit picture, this looks fine. In fact, let's see if I try to, let's see, add brush. Let's try to brighten up the feathers a little. Oh, then that's not that bad. I'll back off on this a little. Okay, and you could always play with this. Here it is before. Okay, no, I agree with them. Lightening them just a little bit like that. That helped. In a backlit situation, it is hard. I think it's a really nice, just nicely created picture on the diagonal branch here, the way it's set. Very difficult lighting situation. I like it.
That is Still in Ivory by William Meekins, 23 points, third place.
Very nice.
Dan says, this image is very well executed technically. Focus is sharp throughout and the exposure is handled beautifully. The main challenge is identifying a clear focal point as several interesting elements are competing for attention. Depending on how it is cropped, this could actually become two strong but very different images. Cropping just above the flowers on the boat would create a clean waterscape, with the bricks along the water's edge forming excellent leading lines. Alternatively, cropping more from the top and highlighting the mighty atom as a planter would create a more focused, character-driven composition. The angle of the planter is also a bit conflicting in that it almost acts as a visual barrier to the rest of the scene. Adjusting the crop or perspective could help it feel more integrated.
That's an interesting point. What Dan was saying is you can actually have two images here. I never even thought of that. That actually is a very interesting image. Panorama type with these two, I think, channel markers or whatnot there. You have a diagonal where the river is coming right out to the ocean there. That's a really, I like that. And his other thing was, or you could crop it from the top. Whoops. And in a sense, just have some form of the planner. I don't think that's as strong as compositionally as the first one, the considering. And you could get to it, you don't have to have just one picture. You might like this and have this as a picture and also do a second picture with that, just the panoramic with the one on top. I think overall exposure is fine. I wouldn't do anything different. We just accentuated the colors a little. So no, I think nice shot. But that is an interesting point of his about just having and let me bring that up again, the panoramic on top there as well, because I didn't even see that. Oops. Yep, and I think that's a strong image compositionally. So very interesting.
That is The Mighty Atom by Stephen Spencer, 22 points.
Nancy says, I really liked the little bit of warm light drama in this otherwise cold and bleak winter scene. Kudos to the photographer for capturing this. The exposure is perfect, and I like the photographer's lower perspective. This photo was captured during blue hour, when there was just enough light to prevent total darkness. Timing is everything in this case. To the photographer, if you wanted to play with this some more and know how to use either Lightroom or Photoshop, would you consider using the geometry filter that corrects keystoning, where the sides of buildings tend to lean toward the center? It is a one-click wonder. I don't know how that would look for this photo, but it would be interesting to see. Also, some editing programs now have a tool where, with a couple of clicks, you can get rid of power lines. If you don't know how to edit yet, please hang on to this photo, and when you do learn, you might want to consider making these little edits. You have a great photo here, and I really enjoyed it.
So Nancy's point was, there is your before, and here the little adjustment is after to fix some of that keystoning. I really love the perspective of this image taken from down like this. So I really, really like her point again too, is sometimes you get a beautiful image like this. There's nothing you could do. You know, your eyes keep going to the power lines. Now, I didn't say stupid power lines, which I was going to, because there are people that say, but I like that there. It gives it a feel or whatnot. So, and I am being very, it's not a rule or anything else like that. If you like the way the power lines look in that picture or whatnot, do not remove them. Not at all. That is nothing. This is just purely a preference thing. And we just want to show you the options are there. So if I go through, now there's a tool to do this automatically, but it's not working tonight. So we're going to have to use my hand to do this. Yeah, Eric, every time I hit the shift key, it does that. It does delete. Okay, so we just did a rough thing here just to show you before and afterwards. So there is, and this is just a nice, clean, beautiful image, blue hour. So we corrected a little, as per Nancy's thing, a little bit of geometry, taken the wires out. There's the wires before, there's afterwards. And this is just a gorgeous image. I mean, the idea to get down on the ground and do this kind of perspective was just brilliant. And I love this one. So, yeah.
That is The Old Pure Station by Kenneth Houdina. 23 points, third place.
Very nice.
This is a well-exposed image where the lighting is tricky and has captured a leading line. It would be helpful if there's more of a focal point. When I look at this image, my eye goes to the reflections. One suggestion would be to pick one of the more interesting puddles and compose so that it's emphasized in the image.
Yeah, this is a difficult one in that my eye doesn't know where to go to in this. In just experimenting with this, is maybe with the road there, take off some of this on the left so you have more the road just kind of leading you down and into the picture again, but it's not really leading you to anything because there's nothing down at this end. The stop sign doesn't bother me here. It's a bit of color. It's offset by the fire hydrant here. So I'm not really certain. That would be one of my suggestions. What they were saying also is these puddles are very interesting in themselves. And whoops, if we do the puddles, maybe just coming in and centering on some of the reflections Not really certain. We're just kind of playing it by ear here because there's nothing obvious really to do here. But this is difficult because there's just a lot going on here. And even when I narrow it down so we have the road leading us into the picture, there's nothing really back there it's leading us kind of into. So it's a difficult one. Hey, Chris?
That is titled Uncertain by Reed Vale, 17 points. Dan says this is a beautifully executed image. Focus is spot on and the overall exposure is very well handled. There are just a few small hot spots that could be clone brushed out to keep the viewer's attention on the subject. The placement of the flower works nicely within the frame. If being extra picky, it's worth watching where the leaves meet the edge of the image, but the background treatment is so pleasing that it just helps balance that minor distraction. Well done.
What Dan was suggesting is just some of these hot spots that we see if we could just alter a little. I'm not sure how well that's going to work. Let's see. Yeah, it just takes our see that there. And let's see if we could do just anything on this. And with AI, you have no idea what it's going to do, not do, so you just give it a try. Let's see, here's our before and after for just those. Again, but these you kind of fool around with. It's a beautiful picture with the diagonal going across here, the beautiful background, whether it's an artificial background or whatnot, or a texture, it works well. And I took off, some of these bright areas accentuate the depth and actually might look better on, maybe just taking that bright one off in there. So, you could just see what looks well, but overall, really just a nice image.
That is Underwater Rose by Denise Owesny Richardson, 22 points.
Nancy's comment is, I am always envious of photographers who can capture birds in flight with such focusing precision as done here. To the photographer, nicely done. The exposure is also pretty good. The only suggestions I have is to crop the photo so that this bird is not in dead center. The maker may want to take some off the bottom left side and the top, so that the bird is no longer dead center, but also has enough room on the right-hand side to visually fly into.
Okay. So we'll just do some little subtle things like that. And yeah, so now the bird is not center. It has room that it flies into there as well. I noticed they've also done some vignetting on that, which is nice. This is just it's sharp as anything. It's I think it's real too. So it's a beautiful, beautiful shot.
That's White Ibis in Flight by Denise Owesny Richardson, 24 points, second place.
Very nice.
This is a nice portrait of a bird on a fence that is well exposed. There's one technical issue that takes away from the overall image, over sharpening of the bird and the fence. In terms of composition, I would like to see the crop adjusted to show more fence at the bottom so you can see the entire notch and then some. Also, a little less space on the left. Lastly, the background is competing with the subject. A little more background blur would help with this.
Ugh, tall order. Okay. a little less on the left. And there we go. So now you have these diagonals of the tree branches coming because that didn't add anything. The bird is right on the line of thirds. The other thing is that notch in the fence. I think they wanted to see more of that. Let's see what it does. No idea. Will it give us the notch? Nope. For that one. Nope. For that one. Nope. For that one. Forget the notch. Actually, you could keep doing, you could do it another time. You know, after a while, you know, it will get it too. But the point being is taking that off, putting the bird right there, really, really makes a difference. The over sharpening, I couldn't see. Usually you see a white line around the bird when there's been over sharpening, the radius, and I do see it down here. If you look, you can see a little white line down along the side. I don't really see it up top, so that's just more of a small thing as well. Now, in terms of the background blurring more, I think it looks fine like that. Let's see if AI Photoshop will help us. Let's see if it identifies the bird as the closest subject and the trees in more distance. It's thinking now. So it's analyzing the image. Okay, it's almost done. Let me see, visualize. Oh, it did. Okay, so now what Photoshop will let me do is, okay, if I look at that background now, it's going to let me blur the background some more. So there is before and after. And if you want those branches a little, to where its AI is actually not correctly identified certain things as the depth there. So I've just manually done it. But there is our before and afterwards. So you have the ability to, and that looks by taking a little bit off the left there. So the bird is in the rule of thirds, kind of bottom right in that rule of thirds, and then blurring the background, which I did not think that, but yeah, that actually works well. And that's actually a really stunning image. Again, I just like the way that diagonal comes down too, and the way the bird is positioned. So very, very nice. So I hope you're seeing that what we're doing is we're taking good images that the person says, this is going to be a good picture. Then afterwards, when we have time, we don't have to worry about the bird flying away. When you're at this point, you want to get that bird before it flies away. You're not standing there thinking composition, this, whatnot. You see a nice picture, you get it. You get it. And so what we're doing here is afterwards, are there things we could do to really just accentuate that, get it the way you'd like to see it. So again, I think this is a good example of these few little things have made this now really, really nice. Okay, Chris?
That is Wren by Thomas Winsick, 21 points. Dan says this is a beautiful bird, and the catchlight in the eye really brings it to life. There are several distracting elements in the background that could be cropped out to help the viewer focus more fully on the subject. The sharpening appears a bit strong, as the bird's feet and branch look slightly unnatural as a result. The overall image also feels somewhat desaturated, which takes away from the vibrancy the scene could have. With a few subtle adjustments, this could become an even more striking wildlife portrait.
Okay, I've increased the color saturation and added a bit more contrast. So you can see, as he was saying, true, it's a little bit flat here. The blacks are not truly black, and I could see that from the histogram. The whites are not truly white. So when I correct for that, that kind of jumps out at you. The bird is a little bit way on the left there, close to the left. Now we could either add some on the left, or we could take some off the right to put it a little more like that. Now there's not as much distracting. We notice the bird more. We've increased the let me see if I can increase the colors a little more. There we go. So there's our before, and now you see it just kind of a little flat appearance. That's not a camera error. The camera is averaging everything out, and it tends to sometimes have things look flat. So that's perfect exposure, but here it brings it back to the way you saw it, which is really just kind of stunning there. Yep.
That is Yellow Warbler by Thomas Winczek, 20 points.
Nancy says, outstanding symmetry. I admire the photographer for capturing this photo. I had to chuckle to myself while looking at it, knowing full well that I would have ended up on my backside while trying to lean back far enough to get this shot. Your exposure is perfect, and for such a simple subject, it is still intricate. How can tons of cement have such a lacy look? To the maker of this photo, great job.
I looked at this, and you're right, very nice, very symmetric. But there's one thing that bothered me, is the color palette. There's a little bit, kind of a yellowish tint here as well, and the blue. It just didn't jump out at me. And what I thought is, what about, since this is a pattern picture, what would this look like in black and white? You make it black and white, and then you take the sky and bring that down. Now, I mean, I looked at that and said, wow, that's, it's like a graphic image, a pattern that just really jumped out at me. So I agree with Nancy. This is nice. It's a very, very nice picture. But as you could, again, experiment with it, that also is, how many, oh, I don't want to, I was going to poll the audience, but I'm not going to, because that is since this is a judgment thing, this is up to the maker. But again, this is whoever the maker is on this. This is Ann Williams. And we're just giving you suggestions. In other words, if you, the maker of this picture, say, I like it like this, I really do, that's fine. But knowing that you could do something like this, if you say, oh, I didn't know that, I like this better, so we're just giving you the opportunity. That does not mean this is a better picture than the other one. I just wanted to get that clear.
Well, the judges liked Ann's interpretation. That's called Zoo Bridge by Ann Williams, 23 points, third place.
Excellent. Now, I always want to get that across. That this is opinion. Again, as long as you have the tools to try these different things, especially all the different crops we're doing. If some of the crops we did, if you're sitting there in the audience saying, I kind of liked it the other way, that's fine. That is totally fine. It's just knowing that these are things you could do. Again, it's your picture.
This is a nice capture of the bird and its environment, but it's marred by editing artifacts. Throughout the image, there are colored lines and areas of sharpness that are not consistent with the adjacent area. Also, the reflection of the bird does not appear to be correct.
The reflection of the bird does not appear to be correct? Is that what you said? Oh, reflection, you mean the reflection down here is not true to up there? I don't know. Unless you know what that could have been. I think you do know. Is if the picture ended, that's interesting. If the picture had ended here, something like that, and they used AI to expand it, and AI just kind of sometimes just scoops. But again, we don't know. Is Thomas here? No. No, but it could have been. That's an interesting point. I didn't even recognize that. When I look at this, oops. The first thing I look at overall is, and I look at the histogram, a lot of things here, but no bright whites and no pure blacks. Again, is it flat? It wouldn't seem to be because there are blacks and whites here until you actually try. So if I'm going to increase my blacks a little more here, let's see. And sometimes now when we go, there's before, there's afterwards, and now that just seems a lot, this seems flat, and this seems truer to what was there before. Cropping wise, I think it's fine. Bird's not in the center, right? Bird's in focus, everything good, yeah. Try darkening the background. Well, I think if you selected the bird here and darkened the whole background, it would look artificial. Well, let's just try that. But there's another thing. I'm going to take up your point there. So the suggestion is let's see if we could select the bird. There are two ways to do this. Let's see if the fast way works, okay? And you were saying darken the background a little. Okay. So this will give us an idea what darkening the background. Oops. Yeah, computers. Okay, so if I darken a little, and here's before, right? Oh, computers. Oh, you don't have to, you didn't do anything. This is the computer thing. Here's. Oh, that includes, wait, let me get I'm trying to show just the background. There. So there, and the suggestion was to darken the background. Now that's one way to do it, and that's fine. But that might look a bit artificial. It depends. You could go on this, and I could just come off a little bit more. And there it is. There, and that's totally fine. So that's a good idea. So that's one way to do it, is take the background, and that accentuates the bird a little more. The other way to do it is let's just take a brush, and let's just take our exposure, oops, down. Let's see what. Masks or not. Let me take that off there. Okay. Okay, we're having a You think it's getting tired? Okay. We are going to write our graphics driver, and so we will close out of Adobe, open again, open it up, and now we'll close everything down. Let's open it up again. Please bring up the image. Okay, we'll keep what we had done is we had made our blacks a little, there we go. Okay, so we had given it some more blacks in there for contrast. And now let's see. These things we're doing, when it uses a lot of AI, it uses a lot of processing power, and it's really big on your video card or graphics card as well. And on our club computer, we're also running video here too. When it really puts a strain on it, that's when you see these kind of things, and that's what's happening. So yeah, that's one of the disadvantages of some of the AI things. They are a big, oops, and it just, let's see before it, let me try one more time here. Nope, okay, what we're going to do then is see if we could show this another way. No, it won't work. The other thing you could do, in fact, let me just try this one. No, it won't work either. The other thing you could do is, you're right, we selected the subject and we darkened the background. The other thing you could do is do a vignette. And that's what I was talking. With the vignette, you could selectively darken little bits around there too. So it's not, so around the bird, it's still a little light. So it's not that the bird is one thing and the background all of a sudden gets dark. You could darken little bits of the corners and whatnot and around the edges so that your eye is drawn into the bird, but the bird and the area around it are still good. So that is, Chris, get us out of this.
That is Black Neck Stilt by Thomas Winczek, 22 points.
Oh.
Dan says it really does look like it wants a hug, and that charm comes through immediately. Exposure's handled beautifully, and all the important details are sharp, which gives the image strong technical footing. Compositionally, there are a few challenges. With the bird facing away from the viewer, it's harder to form a connection with the subject. The feathers are gorgeous, but they're merging into the right edge of the frame, which makes the composition feel a little bit tight. Giving the bird just a little more space to live in the frame would help the image breathe and strengthen the overall presentation.
Okay, let's see if we can. Let me clear the crop here. Okay. And reset this. Okay. So we're working around our graphics problem here. Is one of the things was, and one of the problems we have is close cropping. Where we get something in, beautiful vulture like this, but it fills the whole frame. And that's really noticeable. Now, sometimes there's nothing you could do. But at the time, you should always try to not get it perfect in there. Give yourself some room so you could crop down afterwards. But if not, there is always that in post-processing. Let's see how this does. We can give ourselves a little, well, I'll try a little bit on the bottom there as well. And see how this, just to give you an idea what the, and there you could see now, let me, right, that we have a little bit of room to breathe. We see the bird now, it's not right up against the edge like that. And if I look again, this is, if I give it a little more contrast there too. It's hard with the bird facing away from us. If we also, let's try a little vignette on this one. Yeah, and I'm going to come down. Oops. Okay. Let me get a brush. Whoa. You're right, Eric. This is there. Okay, let's see if we can work around all this. Wow, yeah, all of our keys are. Okay, let me. Boy, this computer is going to the doctor. After this, let's see if we could work around it. Okay, I'm doing workaround. And you can see I'm just, with a vignette, it allows me to, it's not like a circle even. I'm just enough in some of the side areas, and you could adjust that, how dark or whatnot you want. But here's the effect. You see there, and with a little vignette, see how it just draws our eyes in, but we can't really tell that there's a vignette. So on that, that's before, that's afterwards. So on some of these, by giving it a little bit more room to breathe, by we expanded there, giving it a subtle vignette to focus our eyes in like that, those are some of the things we could try. Chris, you want to?
That is Buzzard by Steven Spencer, 20 points.
Okay. Let's see if it's working. Nope, we'll open in Photoshop. Okay.
Nancy says, this black and white of the Cleveland Art Museum is stunning. The viewer is able to see so much detail that the same photograph, if done in color, might not have been able to capture. The tonal quality in the blacks and whites is perfect. There are rich blacks and soft whites with every shade of gray in between. To the photographer, outstanding work.
Yeah, this is very nice. If I were to look at this, one of the things, at least to my eye, is again, it's very busy. I didn't really know where to look. I like the escalator on the right. It's like a diagonal. There's something here. But always the question I like to ask in my pictures is like this, is all of this stuff, is not are the trees of any value, but as much, do we need that much? Does it add anything? What if I came off just a little like that? So I still have the trees on the left. Now it's a more, this archway here is more in the middle. You know, this leads up. And it just seemed to me a bit more balanced that way. So here's our before, oops, original. Let me just go back to, yeah, I'm just gonna, I tried, those keys aren't working anymore. There's our, I'm using the history key there. So yeah, so this is an artistic decision here. There is before, after, and it's up to you which you think, you know, is best. Just giving you a suggestion, but otherwise everything is technically done perfectly. Chris?
That is CMA Atrium by Reed Vale, 22 points.
Open it up in Photoshop. There we go. Okay.
This is a fantastic image. The composition is excellent. Your eye follows the structure into the image. The processing of the image is very good. The gray tones are beautiful. There are solid blacks and the whites are well controlled. My only quibbles would be on the left, there appears to be a highlight that has been overly darkened. And in the upper middle, there are some smeared details. Overall, excellent work.
I didn't see that, the highlight overly. This was one of those unusual ones. So I looked at this and I looked carefully and I think this is a beautiful image. I couldn't think, there's nothing that I would suggest. The blacks and whites, the tones are perfect, the exposure is perfect, the composition is beautiful. Yeah, I have nothing to add to this one.
The judges agree. This is entitled Going Up by Denise Owesny Richardson, 25 points, first place.
Very nice. Very nice.
Tack sharp focus and excellent exposure make this a very strong image. It's close to perfect with only two small distractions. The hot spot on the shirt button and whatever is showing in the model's front pocket. Addressing those minor elements would give the portrait an even cleaner, more polished finish.
Okay, let's then try layer here. Let me see if I'm on. Okay, let's see with that hot spot we could do. Boy, is this thing shot. Let's see. Yeah, this is brush tool, patch tool. Wait, let me try this spot healing tool. See if that does it. Okay, we'll do anything we can here. Yeah, so that's one. That's takes that off. There's also that little thing on the nose. And if I could bring the size of the brush down. And let's see, no, it is shot, Eric. Okay, so we got that hotspot off. The other question comes up as to whether, now you might like the color, or like, not the color, the luminosity. There's almost no whites here. And one of the things you could experiment with is bringing the whites up a little. So you still keep it in shadow, but the question is that too dark? Would just a tiny bit more be of value? And again, depends on what look you were going for there. Okay, Chris?
That's Quiet Contemplation by Tim Koresh. 24 points, second place.
Very nice. Keep looking. Let me wait before we do that one. I'll tell you what, Chris, let's go for a 5-minute. I'm going to reboot the computer because the picture's there. I'd like to, it's really on its last leg here, and I hit rebooting. We'll take it, help us. So let's take a 5-minute break.
There are goodies out in the gathering room. Need to get back in business. I think we fixed things up. We put some aspirin in the USB ports. For those of you at home, I'm very sorry. But okay, we'll start to get back in. And before we get started,
I'm going to go back to before things kind of crash. Now, we still might have problems with the video card, but let's see how long we could do this. In the previous picture, the button was one of the things Nancy said, your eye kind of goes down to that button. And so we just took the hotspot off. The other is sometimes you see on the nose, there's a little hot spot on the nose. And sometimes there's nothing you could do about that. But again, if you could just get rid of that. Let's see. Nope. And that is... And again, that's one of the interesting things with AI. Let's see if we can get it off the... Nope, it's not going to take it off. Take off the use generative AI. And let's remove, fill, remove, whatnot. Okay, there. So you can see on the nose, that little reflected spot, that gets that taken care of. Okay, let's see what we can do now. Okay.
Okay, Nancy says, there is something good to be said about minimalist photography. Plain and simple, yet captivating at the same time. Mother Nature is the ultimate artist, even when sculpting a snowdrift on a chair. And the maker of this photo saw that beauty too. The exposure on the chair snowdrift is really nice, but in my opinion, I feel that the rest of the photo needs to be just a little bit brighter. Not much, but just a tiny bit. The background and foreground are a bit flat, meaning that there is little tonal value, mostly a flat gray.
Okay, so let's try Nancy's selection of whitening up a little the let's try a little more exposure. There. Down there. Oh, it's a little too much up there. Let's see. Okay, so for the bottom, there, we've increased it, and we could, to taste, we can get that the way we want. We could use another, oops. There. So just doing it seat of the pants wise, that is before and afterwards there. The other thing on this is I liked it, but I just wanted to see what it would look like if I just had it a little bit from the side. It wasn't as close cropped in there. So we'll see that. So yeah, that's it. It's still the minimalist kind of thing, but that gives us a little bit more room to breathe there too. And the final thing I did is gave it a little texture to bring out that snow. You see, you could do various things of that. Or in fact, what it does to the background is let's do that texture for the snow, but let's do it only on the chair. And you could see where I do it here, it brings that out. And now when you look at the snow on the chair, really brings out that snow. So these are things, again, these are not camera settings, but to you, this is probably how it looked. And this explains a lot of times where you develop a picture or you do your picture on your computer and you say, gee, this kind of why doesn't it impress me as much as when I took it? And the reason is because it looked much better when you took it, because your eyes see all of these things. It sees the texture, it sees the whites, but the camera doesn't get it all. So just doing these things. So again, remember always to allow yourself a little bit to crop in. But what we did here, which is just give it a little tiny bit of room to breathe there. As Nancy said, give a little bit, lightened up the bottom a little to balance the light. And, sometimes there's nothing you could do if the light's coming from one side. And we gave it a little texture in there. And this is just stunning as a piece of art almost. So that's interesting. Yep. So Chris, what's
That
our...
is Snowform 1 by Lee Resnick, 20 points.
Yeah. I really like this. That's, I think, a nice recognition of a scene there.
This is a very nice capture of daffodils with good separation of the background and excellent detail and texture. When working with shallow depth of field and a subject is linear, care needs to be taken to ensure the sensor is parallel to the subject to ensure it's in focus from top to bottom. That's tricky, and you did a great job. My only critique would be to brighten just a bit, and I would suggest cropping the right a bit to between the two leaf tips at the bottom.
Okay, so crop in from the right. A little bit. That. Yeah, very nice image. And you could, oops. Yep, so, okay. And you could play with, now the idea of, should you darken the background light? And this is all to taste as well. You are the artist on this. And let's see, just out of curiosity, if it'll pick up the subject of the three. If not, I'll do them a different way. Okay. And if we just, there, I just touch, darken the background. There it is. And you could play with that. Isolate your flowers a little bit more. Oops. There we go. So again, that is something to taste. You're the artist, but you have these tools. You could lighten the background. You could darken it a little. You could use a little vignette on that. So there it is with it darker. If you say this is a bit more natural, that's fine. Up to you there. Yeah, Chris.
That is Spring's Early Beauty by Barbara Good, 21 points.
Oops. We will get this. Oops. Open it.
Okay, Dan says the focus is spot on and the repeating pattern created by the vests gives the image a pleasing sense of rhythm. Without a strong focal point or leading lines, though, the composition feels a bit static and doesn't quite guide the viewer's eye. Exposure is handled well overall, though a few of the vests are slightly bright and could be toned down for better balance. It may be worth experimenting with different angles and perspectives rather than shooting from a standing downward view. Don't be afraid to do that weirdo on the ground photographing life preservers, as those unconventional viewpoints often lead to the most engaging results, both in the photos and in life.
So here we come down. You notice as we come down on our exposure a little there, we get more contrast and the colors pop a little more. And this is a hard one from this angle. One of the things I tried experimenting with is this sand. If we could just work with the patterns, maybe if we crop down from the sand, crop in from the side a little, crop this sand out from the bottom, maybe in there, and we stick more with the patterns then. Now our eyes just go on this repeating pattern. The problem is with the other one, let's see if we, oops. There. So if we go with the other one, see there's the top, the sand at the top doesn't really add anything, and our eyes just are all over the place. And the vests on the left are a lot smaller. If we could kind of just keep it in like this, or even just, let's say, on my crop. And again, you could just play with these. But yeah, there are a number of things you could do. So when you come back with a picture that you say, oh, I'm just not sure, there might be a bunch of things you could do to really just get that picture within a picture, and something you didn't think about at the time. So this is our, so that's our before, and we darkened it down a little crop.
This is Super Soft by Ann Williams, 20 points.
Nancy says, there were several photos here tonight that made me want to jump into them to enjoy the peace and beauty of that location. And this is one of them. The photographer made this viewer want to spend hours there. The nice long exposure gave the waterfalls a wonderfully smooth flowing effect, and the glowing sunlit fall leaves added a calming warmth to the entire photo. The waterfall reflections in the water are lovely. The one thing that bothered me was that little rock formation in the upper left-hand corner of the photo. Would the maker consider cropping the photo to eliminate that small outcropping? To the maker, this photo is beautiful.
I had no comment. I love this one perfectly, but it's very interesting. It shows you a little difference of opinion. I actually like the crop because it frames it in there. Let's see without the, I mean, I like that rock outcropping there. If we bring it in this way, the waterfall is coming right up to the edge there as well. And I like the effect of this kind of enclosing the waterfall in. I wouldn't change anything on this picture. That's my point of view. So Chris, what's the?
That's Tinker's Waterfall by David Lawrence, 23 points, third place.
Yeah, very nice. Beautiful. I keep opening up and seeing if it's rested yet. Okay.
This is a very dramatic capture of the West Side Market. I especially like the angry sky and how it appears to frame the clock tower. My suggested edit would be to brighten everything except the sky. It appears to be a little dark to my eye. I wouldn't include the sky to help maintain its texture. Very nice image.
Yeah, this is, it's interesting. You notice whenever, and you all know, whenever you lift your camera up, or you tilt it up to take a picture of a building, because the sensor is now not parallel with it, and the one part of the sensor is farther away than the other, you get that keystoning effect. You see it in the Plain Dealer all the time, where church towers and things all seem to just come into the middle. Nothing you can do about that. You could correct it in post, but there are times I look at this, I actually like that. It gives that wide angle perspective, and I just like the way it looks. So even I could go in there and attempt to straighten it, and some might do that. I actually like the effect here. What they were saying was see about lightening without lightening the sky. So let's see what we do here. We'll try lightening everything. Oh yeah. And actually, whoa, yeah. I actually like the way it brings out the sky too. Okay, that's our before. And that's afterwards. So again, just doing a little bit with the whites. There are enough blacks there, but just bringing out the whites a little more. And I actually think if the sky was kept dark, I actually like it like this, but let's see. Let's see if our Brush is working here now that we've fixed the problem. Okay, I'm just going to try to opacity. That's strange. Hardness. Okay, so I'm just trying roughly to block out the effects we did in lightning on the sky, just doing a down and dirty thing to see what that would look like. And actually so here's our before and after. So when we lightened everything, but I actually like the sky a bit brighter like that. But in any case, here's our before. Yeah, so I think it was an excellent suggestion. That did kind of make it pop a little like that.
That is West Side Market by Kenneth Hodina, 24 points, second place.
Very nice. Now, something else on this picture is you might see this, the West 25th sign with the traffic lights just seem to come out of nowhere. You don't see the pole. If this building on the right side here wasn't there, that pole might look more awkward just coming out. But this building almost gives like an anchor to that. It doesn't seem like it's coming out of nowhere, even though it's not coming out of that building. So I think, yeah, this is all just very, very well done. Okay.
Dan says, who doesn't love a cat photo? This is a beautiful cat with a friendly disposition. The exposure is well handled and the overall tones look great. The focus is a bit soft, which takes away some impact, and widening the frame would help the composition feel more balanced. A lower shooting angle or encouraging the cat to look up toward the camera would create a much more engaging connection with the viewer and elevate the overall feel of the image.
On this one, it's hard because the cat's so close. Ordinarily, what you're seeing there is cat eye or pet eye, not a cat eye. It's an animal eye. This is the equivalent in animals of red eye in humans. When we get red eye, you've all seen that in flash pictures, it's because the light is bouncing off the retina in the back of the eye, which is full of red blood cells, and it's coming right back at the camera, and you see red. Animals, though, to help them see in the dark, have the same red blood vessels on the retina, but they also have a little silver layer over the retina that helps reflect the light back again. They get to see the light twice, which gives them great night vision. So that little silver thing they have over their retina, that's when you go out at night, when you're camping, and you shine a light out there and you see all the little white dots looking back at you. That's the animal's eyes reflecting, and you're seeing the equivalent of red eye in an animal, which is that mirror effect. So the flash here, this was taken with a flash, and it made that unnatural effect. There are things in post-processing where you could just click on it and it fixes that. When the cat is so big, it won't recognize that because these things are so giant. But to see how it would look differently, and I haven't tried this before, but let's just see if I paint that black and then I'll put a little catch light in it. Wait till I'm done. At least wait till I'm done. Wait till I'm done. Still looks great. But again, if it's because the cat is in my face here as well. I mean, if this cat was back on a bed or something, using the correction where it would darken and then put a catch light in would be fine. But you have to agree that's more normal what a cat looks like as well. So with again, depends what you're going for. It's your picture as well. But that is using a flash with an animal, and you get that, and that's kind of correctable in Photoshop. So that's my 2-bit biology lesson. Okay, could we have
That's the final image of the night. It's entitled "You Looking at Me" by David Williams, 17 points.
and that completes our image. I want to thank everyone who submitted things. Does anyone have any questions on the editing or any things that we did or whatnot? Nope. It's always a lot of fun. Remember, these are our just opinions. I mean mine. The judges, they might give you, when they say it would look better if it was in the rule of thirds, there's an actual basis for that. Or like giving something room to breathe by some space or close cropping. But there are other things that we notice we talked about a lot tonight that are just personal preferences, how you want it to look, where there is no one right way or wrong way. But hopefully we've showed you some of the tools tonight that you could just help on your images. So we thank you very much, and
So
hope
I'd
you
like to
submit other
thank you,
images.
Richard, for being our in-house editorialist and editor.
Oh, that is
Thanks, Bruce, Nancy, and Dan for judging. That takes out of their time. Thank you, all the people who entered. I know that's really hard. Please don't be too discouraged if you didn't place. This is how we learn as photographers, helping photographers. And all of the rest of you.